Hi everybody, I'm Trish Christ. In this episode of Our Nashville, NECAT and our super crew of teenagers spend some time with Tennessee Parks and Greenways Foundation. Executive Director Steve Law and his team are going to show and tell us all the cool things they do for our state.
Come on Trish, let's take a hike.
Let's do it.
It's our Nashville.
It's our Nashville. It's our Nashville.
It's our Nashville.
We all know how to talk about our organization during meetings, but what about the chance encounter of a lifetime? You never know who may share your next elevator, notice your logo on a notebook or a tote bag, and ask what you do. What's the clearest, most persuasive thing you can say in a short elevator ride?
TennGreen is a conservation organization that works diligently to conserve property for parks, nature preserves, and to increase recreational opportunities for people to enjoy nature.
Big topic ahead of us, Steve. Land conservation, land protection is huge. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that not everybody really understands how that works. So that's why we have you here today to help us talk through this important work. Let's start by saying Tennessee Parks and Greenways Foundation. Tell us what you guys are. Are you part of government? Are you a standalone nonprofit? What's your position in the world?
Okay. We are not part of government. We are the oldest statewide land trust in Tennessee. We were founded in 1998. Now, if you're not familiar with what a land trust is or does,
Yes.
A land trust is a private nonprofit organization that works to conserve property really using two different tools primarily. Straight out acquisition of property or purchase of property, or partnering with private landowners to conserve their property using deed restrictions that are known as conservation easements. Nationally, there are about 1,700 land trusts across the country that have conserved millions and millions of acres in the U.S. Here in Tennessee, there's about a dozen land trusts, and we've conserved collectively about 900,000 acres.
900,000 acres in Tennessee.
Yes.
Awesome. You know that I've run around in the land of conservation for a while
Yes.
myself, and it took me a while to get comfortable with the language. Let's talk about the word conservation. What's the difference in conservation and protecting and preservation? We use all of these words.
Some of them are used, it's often case a matter of semantics. I like the word conservation. I think it's more encompassing. Preservation tends to imply that nothing will ever change with the property. And as we know, nature changes constantly. What we are trying to do is to conserve the conservation values of it, the important aspects of it. We know that a piece of property is going to change over time, but we're trying to keep it in its natural state. So I like conserving or conservation far better than preservation. Either case, whether it's conservation or preservation, it is a matter of protecting the property, hopefully in perpetuity.
And protecting from development, from damage.
Protecting from, really a variety of factors. Right now, our environment, as you well know, is under assault from just a myriad of factors. Burgeoning population growth, habitat destruction, diminishing air and water quality, and certainly weakening environmental regulations. So by protecting or conserving property, we're hoping to set aside, in many cases, the best of what's left and keep it, and more often than not, what we like to do is to try to get it into the public domain so that the public has access to these properties to enjoy for whatever their favorite leisure pursuits are, and it will always be there for them.
In your title, Tennessee Parks and Greenways, greenways does mean a few different things,
Yes.
especially here in Metro Nashville.
Yes.
The greenway system of these wonderful little paved bike and walking and running trails throughout the city. Is that the greenways that you're talking about when you say Tennessee Parks and Greenways?
No, we are talking in a broader sense. We are talking more in terms of the linear corridors, the undeveloped strips of land, whether it's a river corridor or a ridge top on a mountainside. It doesn't matter. It's not necessarily, it's not a trail. It could have a trail through it. The Cumberland Trail is one of the biggest corridors that exists in Tennessee, and it has a trail through it. So yeah, greenways has really evolved over time. I think at one time it was especially known as a linear park.
Great description.
And nowadays, because of the prevalence of walking and biking trails, they have also taken on that name of greenways. So I think in today's language, people tend to equate greenways with an asphalt or a pit gravel trail. That's not necessarily what we're focused on.
Let's go through a process of a landowner calls you and says, I have this piece, I have this farmland in rural Tennessee. What can I do with Tennessee Parks and Greenways to take care of it for the future?
There are several options that we look at. One of the things that we do, and I guess maybe I should back up a little bit if I can, and just sort of explain what our mission is and how we go about fulfilling our mission. So TennGreen's mission is to protect what we call Tennessee's natural treasures. And the natural treasures could be anything from critical wildlife habitat for rare and endangered species, to river corridors that protect our water quality, to scenic viewscapes such as iconic waterfalls and towering bluffs and canyons. Our mission is really twofold. One arm of it is the actual direct land conservation. The other arm of it is the community outreach and public education. When we go about acquiring land, or when we're just focused on the land acquisition part of it, we work in partnership with private landowners, with local municipalities, and with state and federal agencies to do things like create new parks and nature preserves, to protect wildlife corridors, to...
Actually, I have a question for you, if I can interject in there. That's another one of those terms that probably didn't enter my vocabulary until I worked in conservation myself. Wildlife corridor. Tell me what that is, please.
Wildlife corridor is a linear piece of property, if you will, that allows for wildlife movement. It allows for actually migration, not only of wildlife, but also of plants. It is, think of it as some people call them greenways, although now today greenways typically have a different connotation to them. Many people associate greenways with trails. Greenways don't have to be trails. It's really a linear park is what a corridor is. Much of our work is done when possible in corridors, because what we want to do is we want to provide as much connectivity as we possibly can. That's really where you get the biggest bang for your buck in conservation, is making those connections. So the natural treasures that, what we consider to be a natural treasure would be things such as habitat for rare and endangered species. It could be river corridors that protect our water quality, and it certainly could be the scenic vistas like waterfalls, bluffs, and canyons. So getting back to our mission is really twofold. We do directly land conservation as one arm of it. The other is community outreach and education. When it comes to the land acquisition component, we work in partnership with private landowners, with local municipalities, with state and federal agencies to do many things. We help them create new parks and nature preserves. We create wildlife corridors. We enhance or expand already existing public lands that are open to the public, and we try to enhance public recreation opportunities. The other end of what we do is the community outreach and education component. And this is where we utilize our programs and outings to actively engage people in the outdoors, to get them outside. This environmental education component of our mission is so vitally important because we truly believe, and I know from past experience, that the more people can experience nature firsthand and get out there and enjoy it, the more inspired they're going to be. And you've probably encountered this too. And the more inspired they are, the more likely they are to support conservation initiatives.
Absolutely. How do you impress upon someone who doesn't necessarily touch nature in a day-to-day life that 50 miles from here, 10 miles from here, 90 miles from here is this precious resource that you want their help protecting?
Well, that's where the environmental education part of it comes in, the community outreach. Not everyone has access or easy access to a state park or a community park or a nature preserve. But what we try to do, working on a statewide basis, through our partnerships with the state agencies and especially with local municipalities, we have an opportunity to provide them with the supplemental expertise to acquire these properties, to either add to their existing local park system, which would then make easy visitation for everyone, or in some cases, we work with them to start a brand new park system.
My name is Carolyn Ream, and I am the Communications and Events Coordinator for the Tennessee Parks and Greenways Foundation. So it's kind of funny because before I started here, I wasn't really involved with land conservation. So it's been a learning experience for me, but I also feel like that has helped in the ways that I communicate with other people, especially those people who don't really know anything about land conservation. There's a lot that people don't really think about when it comes to saving the land. They don't realize as much how many benefits it has for clean air, clean water, food resources, and things that we kind of take for granted every day. So I try to think about that and relate to how other people might benefit from conservation.
Tell me if you and your staff choose the lands that you protect, or if you are sort of the recipient of goodwill phone calls and suggestions of how about this? Do you go out and search of properties to take care of?
We do both, actually. So it's a great position for us to be in. To a certain extent, we are reactive in nature. We do get those phone calls from a landowner who may be interested in selling their land. If that's the case, then what we do, since we're really not in the business, we're not designed to hold property for a long amount of time. Our role in conservation is to be in terms of the permanent land acquisition, is to be a conduit to a public agency. So what we will do is we will assess the property. We will then contact the appropriate partner, whether it's TDEC or TWRA or the local municipality, and see what their interest might be in the property. If it's a landowner that's contacting us about protecting their land, but they still want to own their land, that's right up our alley in terms of conservation easements, because that's what conservation easements do. They allow the landowner to retain their property. They have basically all rights to that property, except the rights that they choose to give up through negotiating out a conservation easement with us. And what the conservation easement does is it simply limits the amount of development that would be permitted on their property. And this is something that landowners want to go into willingly. The reasons are all across the board, but what I've found is that many landowners that reach out to us to do this, do it because they want this to be their legacy. They want to know that they are leaving something good behind long after they are here to enjoy it themselves.
Let's talk about some of those acronyms, TDEC and TWRA. Tell us who those partners are for you.
Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, that's our state parks agency. We work very cooperatively with them on a very frequent basis. TWRA is the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency. They're the ones that manage the state wildlife management areas. And we work with them also. Their focus tends to be more on hunting and fishing, less on hiking, although at certain times of year you can hike their properties. So both of those are such great partners for us. Again, they work statewide, we work statewide. I think, again, the biggest thing that we can do is work in partnership. There's no reason for any conservation organizations to be pulling against each other.
Right.
And I know you get that, having worked at the Nature Conservancy, but it's so important. There is more land out there that needs to be protected than all of us combined could possibly protect.
Exactly.
And so we need to work in synchronization with each other. We need to be good partners. And TDEC and TWRA are great partners for TennGreen.
My name is Alice Hudson Pell, and I'm the Director of Development for the Tennessee Parks and Greenways Foundation. Well, I'll never forget the day that Kathleen Williams, our former executive director and founder, took me on a hike up to one of my favorite places in the world, Grassy Cove. It's about a 2-hour drive from Nashville, and it is worth every minute in the car. It's got some beautiful places like Black Mountain, which is just an extraordinary view, Brady Mountain, which is a beautiful, beautiful hike. It's pretty strenuous up to the top, though. And then at the bottom of the cove is a place we just protected called the Karst Forest at Grassy Cove. Karst Forest has land bridges, it has caves, it's just an extraordinary place, and Grassy Cove might be one of my favorite places, and I just will never forget that trip with her, especially because she kept drilling me on what all the different plants were. I grew up in Atlanta, and I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta, and I did not go hiking, and I did not go camping, and I did not have access to these types of places, or at least I thought I didn't. And so when I moved to Nashville and became involved in conservation, my eyes were really open to how amazing it is. So in Nashville itself, we worked on several projects. We have an island on the Cumberland River. We've worked at Beeman Park. We have worked in the Bell Forest Cave and the Westmead Waterfall. So it's extraordinary to be able to participate here in my backyard, but then opening my eyes to what's an hour away, an hour and a half away, has just been an extraordinary opportunity. So we work statewide. We've got a big project couple in Memphis right now. Also to do wetlands in the middle because of the ecoregions here in Tennessee. Our wetlands are extremely important. And then a lot of our areas that we work in are also along the Cumberland Plateau, which you can see the diversity here and the reason that it's so important to keep.
We are at beautiful Beeman Park in the Jolton area of Nashville. This is actually one of my favorite parks. It's the second park I visited when I first moved to Nashville almost 3 years ago. And it is just, it's absolutely gorgeous. Springtime is just incredible with wildflowers along the trails and the creek. TennGreen has a relationship with many local governments and parks and recreation, and Metro Parks is one of those governments that we have and park systems that we have a relationship with. We worked in partnership with Metro Parks about 3 years ago to acquire an additional 13 acres. It was an in-holding inside this park that was slated to be developed and subdivided into 4 home sites. So we feel like that was a very important cause for us to get involved in, and through public outreach and a public campaign we were able to raise the funds to purchase the property and convey it to Metro. So this is again a beautiful spot.
Well, I'm Bob Tuke, and I'm on the board of directors of TennGreen. Well, first and foremost, if we don't conserve the natural world will go away. There is no choice. So we call it in perpetuity. There's no choice. So we must conserve it. So that's number one, because it's the right thing to do, because animals and plants live in this world, not just humans. But then secondly, conservation in Tennessee is so important because it's a huge aspect of our economy. it draws people here. And so, and when they come here, they spend money. So if people are focused on money and economy, another great reason to conserve Tennessee. I don't think it's as pure as the one I said first, but if you're driven by that, it's a perfectly good reason to do it. And then thirdly, if we don't do it now, it can't be brought back, at least not adequately. So we have to do it now. And one of the things that TennGreen does is it tries to identify important conservation places, and then it tries to link them together if it's possible. So if it's possible to link up important conservation areas, particularly where there's a need for wildlife to be able to move along some kind of a trailhead or some kind of just natural habitat, important to conserve it. What we have to do going forward, we have to be mindful not only of important natural treasures to save in Tennessee, that's really important, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that Tennessee is a little small piece of the world, and there's lots of stuff going through Tennessee that starts somewhere else in the world, like a monarch butterfly, like various birds, critters on the ground. And so we need to be mindful of the fact that there's not only a national interest at stake here, but frankly a worldwide interest. And so going forward, we're going to do our best to identify places that need to be conserved so that that kind of nature also is respected. So now you're looking at communities, you're looking at important natural resources like, you know, Virgin Falls or Cummins Falls or that sort of thing, but you're also looking at corridors, green corridors, linking them together. And so we're strategically, and we've just finished finishing a strategic plan, and in that plan, part of it is what's our strategy for conserving not only places but also the whole picture of conservation in Tennessee.
I'll bet that you are giving brand new information to some of our viewers right now. And you know that stations like NECAT, by federal law, we can't solicit donations on behalf of other nonprofits, but there are a variety of ways that folks can help that are not checkbook related. Tell us what a viewer could do to further your endeavors.
Two things quickly pop to mind. One is get actively involved and engaged in conservation. Do not sit on the sidelines and think that somebody else or expect somebody else to step up. Get informed and get engaged. That is one of the best things that somebody can do. Get out on a property. Take someone else out on a property with you. It's inspiring. You mentioned the financial, but there's so many other ways. There's people can become volunteers. People can attend an activity or an event that is sponsored by a land conservation organization. They could even join a committee of that organization or even try to become a board member. Every organization has a list of ways that people can get engaged specifically with them. I encourage everyone to find their nearest conservation organization that really blends with what their interests are and engage with them. It will be just an incredible experience for both the organization and the individual.
Okay, Steve, this is my favorite part of the whole, the whole interview process.
Okay.
It's our speed round of questions. Very similar to the game we would have played when we were kids, where I ask you a question and the first answer that comes to your mind, just let it roll.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
Speed round with Steve Law. True or false? Tennessee ranks 13th in the country for animal species diversity.
True.
True or false? Tennessee ranks 17th in the country for plant species diversity.
True.
Your website says, and I quote, Tennessee is ranked number 2 in the U.S. for obligate subterranean species due to the extensive cave systems present. Now, what the heck does that mean?
I mean, Tennessee's geology is basically riddled with holes, if you will. So underground, a lot of in many parts of Tennessee, especially the Cumberland Plateau, the ground beneath the layer of dirt that you're
Yes.
walking on is just a series of caves and caverns that take water away. So in some cases, water will fall on land and just disappear. It won't actually go into a river immediately. There are certain species that require that type of habitat and that type of environment, and that's the only place that they're found. So yes, Tennessee has a lot of those species. We rank very high in the country.
Number 2.
Number
Wow.
2.
Wow. True or false? Tennessee has more caves than any other state.
True.
Ha ha, Kentucky.
Yeah.
What's the hardest thing to get people to understand about conservation?
That conservation is for everyone. Conservation is good for the economy. Conservation is good for human health. There's no downside to conservation. It's good for everybody.
That's great. And my last question is very easy. What's your website?
www.TennGreen.org.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Trish.
Awesome.
It's our Nashville.